Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cooper, thank you for being here. I know you've said many times you're not an expert in computer security, so I won't try to get too detailed. My first question is, have you ever worked in the federal government before?
Yes, I worked in the White House in 2000, 2001.
Were you involved in handling classified information?
No.
Did Mr. Pagliano work for you?
I'm sorry, can you clarify what you mean, work for me?
So you were responsible for setting up these servers, is that correct?
I oversaw the setup of these servers.
So who was your boss when you were setting up the servers?
President Clinton was my boss.
And when you set up the servers, you've reached out to the services of Mr. Pagliano at some point, is that correct?
Correct.
And so was he your consultant?
Yes, he was a consultant.
Was he working at State Department at the time?
At the initial setup, he was not working at the State Department.
While he was working at the State Department, was he involved in providing consultative services to your organization?
Yes.
Is that normal?
I have no basis to judge that.
So, as the person responsible for setting up the servers, did you ever engage a third party to do stuff like technical vulnerability assessments or penetration testing?
I left that responsibility to Mr. Pagliano.
And Mr. Pagliano was responsible for these servers from the beginning of the creation of these servers?
He was not responsible for the Apple server. He was responsible from the transition of the Apple server to what we call the Pagliano server and through the duration of the Pagliano server.
And so the Pagliano server was backed up to an external hard drive between May 2009 and June 2011, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
And we had a report from the FBI that states that you would periodically delete these records maintained in the backup as disk space ran out, is that correct?
I have no knowledge of how that procedure operated.
So you weren't responsible for that part?
Correct.
Who was?
Mr. Pagliano.
So when the decision was made to set up an independent server, were you involved in that conversation? I know you were talking about this briefly with my colleague from North Carolina.
Yes.
And why was the decision made to not use a commercial service versus doing something yourself?
Again, the initial setup of both servers was in consideration of a small group of users from President Clinton's office. This was a solution that we felt was an appropriate solution that we were trying. As you can tell by the fact that we transitioned pretty quickly from the Apple system to another system, we were moving to a more robust piece of equipment.
So you've said yourself at some point, did you raise your hand and say, hey guys, I don't have the technical expertise to do this, maybe we should have somebody else?
I was never in the position to be the technical expert on either server.
So there's been a lot of conversation about whether or not this system has been hacked and brute force, you name it. Has the FBI, to your knowledge, investigated whether there was indeed, and was there a forensic investigation on the servers to see whether there was evidence of an attack?
I would refer you to the FBI for that.
Were you ever asked questions about this? Did y'all do an exhaustive, review of whether or not you had records of data leaving the network? Were you monitoring whether data was leaving the network?
I would refer you to Mr. Pagliano or the FBI for that.
Were you ever told, or did you ever suspect classified information was being emailed to and from the Secretary?
No.
Nobody ever brought that up with you or expressed a concern?
No.
Interesting. Do you think that common practices for good cyber hygiene was used in the development of these servers?
I'm not wholly familiar with what common practices are, but I can say that I believe some common practices were likely used.
And who were you using for guidance on what was good digital system hygiene? Mr. Pagliano?
And Apple on the original device.
Now, you said Apple a few times. Is this like you went into the help desk at the mall? Like,
We had an agreement with Apple's business service program at the time that spec'd the equipment that we were going to use, set up the system, and installed it.
Excellent. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.